everybody, it's me, Nikki, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. Today I'm doing a book report. I guess technically it's a book review, but I always liked book reports better as a kid, and it's been a tough week, so I'm going to go back to my childish roots, and it's a book report. And technically it's 4 book reports. So I will be talking about the first 4 books I read for 8 Perfect Murders. Yes, that's what it's called. The only one I have physically is the ABC Murders. Everything else I found online. I will talk about that when I get to those books. And I think that is everything. So let's get started. The first book I read was the ABC Murders. This is a bind up of 4 Agatha Christie books, and ABC Murders is of course by Agatha Christie. And this one is from the Mystery Guild. My mom used to be a part of that, and she got a bunch of these Agatha Christie's and maybe some others, I can't remember. And it's still chugging along too. I don't know if they'd have anything Mom likes. Anyway, ABC Murders has been made into a TV show with David Suchet. I recommend that one. And also looks like it's a video game as well. And it was a TV miniseries with John Malkovich. Let me see. And in a 1965 film with Tony Randall as Hercule Poirot. More comic than mysterious, so says the Wikipedia. Yes. And it's been in a couple other... There's a Japanese version, a French version, an anime, and a video game. I definitely recommend the David Suchet version. It's most of the David Suchet Poirots are more faithful to the books than anything else. I believe it has the Agatha Christie family seal of approval, specifically David Suchet as Hercule Poirot. There are some minor changes in the TV show from the books. Usually, as in this one, just some characters were cut because there was too many of them and they just gave lines to your regulars. But other than that, it's a very good adaptation. And it looks like the one with John Malkovich does a lot more. So, David Suchet. Anyway, this is about a murderer who leaves... Well, first, he writes to Poirot and says, basically, something's going to happen in, I can't remember the city name. Andover, on a certain date. And Poirot and his friend Captain Hastings are mystified. Poirot is more worried. Captain Hastings he's like a Watson type, but a little dumber. I like Captain Hastings a lot, but he's just there as a foil to Poirot, really. And then, not to be a spoiler, but it is right there in the title, someone is murdered. Their name starts with A, and an ABC guide, which is a railway guide from the 30s, I think. They might have used it before and after that period, is left beside the body. And then Poirot gets another letter saying that such and such is going to happen in... oh gosh, I can't remember. Bexel. Bexel on C. Another body is found with B and the ABC guide. And then there's a third one in the city of something with a C. Churston. And there's another body beginning with C and the guide. And so people are now worried about what's next. However, Poirot, he is worried about what's next, but he's still trying to solve the 3 murders that happened. And in the book, he is on, like, it's kind of like a committee with Poirot, like the chief inspector of Scotland Yard, I think. There's a psychiatrist, they call them an alienist, and a couple inspectors who are on the case as well. One in particular is kind of unimpressed with Poirot, and I'm like, but he's Hercule Poirot. And doesn't really take anything he has to say seriously, which happens a lot. More in Miss Marple, actually, than a Poirot. Most of the time when Poirot is like, this happens, the police are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. And then Poirot solves the crime, as is in most cases, and he does it by the now classic bringing everybody together and explaining everything. So there are other characters involved. The relatives of the deceased play a large part in the novel, and they all get together and talk about things because they're all very upset by it, obviously. And there's I wanted to say something, but that's kind of a spoiler. And I'm not going to spoil anything. You get to read them all yourselves or watch them. But yeah, in the end, Poirot saves the day as per usual. And he uses his little grey cells, as he likes to say. But yeah, that's the plot, basically. I have, of course, left things out for spoilers. Overall, I really very much enjoyed it. I don't think they're called 8 Perfect Murders. Of the 4 I've read, the murders are solved. So a perfect murder to me is one that is unsolved. The criminal is never caught. But they're all caught in the 4 I've read. So they can't really be perfect. But I think what it means by perfect murders is how the killer did the murder within the context of the story. You know, there's like great little, in all of them, there's great little like twists and turns, and you're like, of course it's mystery. So yes, I've highly enjoyed ABC Murders. I don't know when this comes, but like I don't know what, 1935 is when it was first copyrighted. So it's a later one, but you can pretty much read any Poirot in order. I don't think there's any, like, the only connection is the people in them. So yes, it was very good. Poirot did a good job. I know at some point Agatha Christie hated writing for Poirot because he was so Poirot. But in this one, he's great and not annoying or anything. Because, you know, sometimes the detectives are like, oh my god. Especially in a long-running series. So, what else? I can't really say a lot. Like I said, I don't want to spoil anything. I think everybody should read these for themselves. So, and out of the 8 in total, I think Agatha Christie is the most famous one. I believe Donna Tartt is on the list, so she might be the second most famous. but Agatha Christie is the most famous, I think, especially of the four in this book report. So yeah, I would definitely check that out. Oh, I forgot. Let's see. There, Poirot is, well, nobody's really racist against Poirot because he's foreign. But they do mention, like, oh, it could be a foreigner. And mental health isn't really well represented. But it's the 1930s, so people are racist and don't know how mental health works. But that is in there if that bothers you. So, but you just have to remember that was the time it's set and that's the time it's written. Alright, next, let us see. I read Death Trap by, it will go right here, Ira Levin, I believe is how you say that. Okay, let me look him up because I know he also wrote Rosemary's Baby and The Stepford Wives, which are probably more well known than Death Trap, but Death Trap is, as Wikipedia says, the longest running comedy thriller on Broadway, or it was. I don't think it's still out there. And it was made into a film with Michael Caine, Diane Cannon, and Christopher Reeve. I do not believe, well, it made 19, well, the budget was 10 million and it made 19, but I don't, yeah, I think people generally enjoyed it, but it's up to you. So anyway, it is a 2-act play, each with 3 scenes, and your characters are Sidney Brule, Myra Brule, Clifford Anderson, Helga Tendorp, and Porter Milgram. Sidney and Myra are married. Helga Tendorp is their new neighbor who is a psychic, and she is Dutch, German, I can't remember. I might say. I can't remember. But she is foreign again. I don't know when it's supposed to be set. Well, it premiered in 1978, so just assume it's supposed to be 1978. And Clifford Anderson is, well, I'll get back to him. Porter Milgram is Sidney's lawyer. Yes. And Clifford is a student of Sidney. Sidney is a playwright. He had at least 1 or 2 really successful plays, but the last ones have been awful. He's having writer's block. And at some point he had a student thing, a class where he taught people how to write, and he tells his wife he gets a message from Clifford Anderson. And he's telling her about this play and how it's going to be a hit. And then he's like, well, I should just kill him and take the play. And Myra is like, oh my god. Because he's kind of joking, he's kind of not joking. And she's like freaking out. And then Clifford is invited over. And things go from there. So this is all Act 1. All this setup. Clifford arrives, they talk about the play. Myra is like, I'm not going anywhere because you're going to kill him. And she like says, you should go and go away. Just go away. But Sydney's like, oh, do you have like a copy? And Clifford's like, oh no, I brought all the original paperwork with me. And it's basically, Clifford's play is basically what's happening on stage. So that's cool. And Clifford's play is also called Death Trap, on one set with a 5-character thriller. So this is how you get your comedy in there. And things continue from there. Helga shows up at some point and is like warning everybody, oh, Sydney, you're gonna be killed. Myra, you're gonna have some pain. There's pain, blah, blah, blah. And then things happen. The attorney shows up, and then more things happen. I can't really tell you about Act 2 because there is something that happens in Act 1 that is quite shocking. I can't imagine, like, Act 1 and 2 are so tense, even just reading them. And then Act 3 happens, and you're like, what have I just seen? What is going on? You're completely confused. But I will say there are some LGBTQIA plus themes in this. And they are not in the movie. It's much made much more obvious, but in the play, it's pretty low key. Just a couple things thrown out there. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. This one was really hard to get a copy of online. I had to do a lot of Googling. Death Trap is one word, by the way, not two. And it was really good. It was really, really, really good. I definitely recommend you. I would probably read. The book is sort of the movie is sort of similar. They change a couple of things like near the end, but it was really good. I 100% recommend Death Trap. It is funny. There are points where you're just like the end specifically is just farce at that point. But yeah, it's pretty tense. And then in the middle of Act 2, like Scene 2, also pretty tense. You're like, oh my god, what is happening? I can't imagine sitting there. Like, Act 1 has happened, and you're like, oh my god. And then Scene 1 for Act 2 happens, and you're sort of relaxed, and then you tense up again. Oh, it was really, really well done. I would definitely check it out. Yeah. I'd love to tell you more about it, but spoilers. Maybe I'll do like a spoiler one where I can be like, oh my god. But yeah, I wasn't expecting it to be that good. It's really good. Definitely check that one out. Okay, next we have right here, Malice Aforethought by Frances Iles, which is a pseudonym for someone. Let me look that up. It is for Anthony Berkeley Cox. He was an English crime writer. I'm also going to check out one of his other books, which is The Poisoned Chocolates Case. I have that ordered. And the it says here in Wikipedia, the opening sentence is immortal because it basically says he's decided to murder his wife, and then he takes some steps. It's actually a really good opening. It was made into a serial in 1979 and in 2005. And I have to tell you, this one took me a while to get through. It's pretty easy to find. I found it on Hoopla, I believe, where I found most of these. And because I knew it was going to happen. I was waiting for it to happen. There's a long, slow build-up of this murder. You know that the Dr. Bickley is going to murder his wife. The first sentence tells you that right away. He's a physician. He's in loveless marriage with Julia. And they're in a small town in England. It's in the, published 1931, so around there. And he likes to go after young unmarried women. Particularly with a young woman named Ivy, who is very susceptible to that. She's easy to manipulate, that kind of thing. And then the village arrives Madeline, a rich young woman, and they fall in love. And she goes, but I don't want to marry a divorced man. And you kind of feel sorry for Edmund at first, because his wife, Julia, is just a bitch. I'm sure she has her reasons for being a bitch. Like, her background that is given to us doesn't sound like it was very happy. But it doesn't make it any better, you know? But then you find out, because he goes after these young women and seduces them and uses them, particularly Ivy, he's not that great of a guy either. So, you know. And then he starts to poison Julia. And then she dies. And everybody's like, oh, it was an accidental overdose. Well then, the thing with Madeline doesn't even work out. Because she goes off and marries somebody else. And then you get into the second half of the book, where Dr. Bickley believes he has gotten away with murder, and he thinks, maybe I could get away with more murders. And again, it's pretty tense at times. Like, Edmund doesn't even, Madeline does to him what he does to these young women, and he doesn't even know it. And at one point, Julia calls him out, and he's like, no, you don't know. And it's like, oh, you poor, stupid man, I don't actually feel sorry for you. And then he's not great to Julia to do this to her, and, you know, it's just, because because the first sentence is he's going to kill her, and then this is his steps. So you're waiting for that to happen, and then it happens, and they're sort of like, okay, why is the book still continuing? You know? And then you get a little more tense, like, oh god, what's he doing? Why is he doing it? Oh no, he's gonna get caught, because he starts freaking out that he's gonna get caught for these murders. And, or at least the one. And the ending, oh my gosh. I had to ask my mom what she thought about it. I made out like a little, like, here's all the people, this is how they're all connected, what do you think? So I would, again, I definitely recommend it. Once I got into it, none of these are very long. I think I've said that. I can't remember. They're pretty short. It's only a couple hundred pages for each of them, I think. And yeah, it was just really good. It's in the top, it's number 16 in the top 100 crime novels of all time. So, you know, mileage may vary, but yeah, it's just the continuation is just like, you know, oh gosh, I can't even describe it, but it's just really good. Definitely, again, I'm recommending all of these. Check it out. You don't really like anybody in the... I think the only person I liked was Ivy, and I felt kind of bad for her. She didn't deserve any of the bullshit that happened to her. But, yeah, you don't really like anybody. No, not even that guy. There's another guy, he's not very nice either, but you feel kind of bad for him. Who Madeline marries. I don't know. It's just... And then you do feel bad for Julia, but you don't like them. They're not likable people, which is sort of the point, because this whole community is about outwardness and not about how they are on the inside. They're all awful on the inside. So, there's that. And finally, The Drowner by John D. MacDonald. And let's see... I don't believe this one was also very hard to find. It was real hard to find, which is weird because he wrote The Executioners, which was filmed as Cape Fear. They made two in 1962 and 1991. So you would think his other novels would be easier to get, but they weren't, sadly. I don't think... His other novels have been made into... he wrote also Travis McGee, which has been made into a couple things, but not The Drowner. So The Drowner is about... Oh, it's set in the 1960s. And of the four, I liked this one the least, but we'll get into that. So, this is about Lucille Hanson. She left her rich husband because she realized they weren't compatible at all. And she found a new guy. He's older than her. And it's in a small town in Florida, I believe. Like Cape Fear was set in Florida, I think. Don't quote me. And she was picking her life back up. And, you know, she was happy. And then she drowns. She's found at the bottom of a lake. And people are like, oh, it's an accident. Maybe it was a suicide. But her sister... thinks it was murder because they'd been talking. There was no indication of suicidal thoughts or anything like that. She was an excellent swimmer. Basically everybody says that. She was basically like a fish. So it, you know, if she'd gotten a cramp, she would have known what to do. I can't remember the main guy's name. No. I can't remember. I just read it and I can't remember the main guy's name. But he's a private detective who used to be a cop. I'm looking at the Goodreads to see if they have the name, but they don't. Oh, here it is. Paul. Paul Staniel. He goes in, with the sister Barbara. And, they chase down, clues, and, you know, all that PI stuff. They talked to her boss. She worked at a doctor's office. She talked to her boyfriend, Sam. They talked to her husband, who's really upset by the news, because he thought they were going to get back together, where she was going to divorce him and stay with Sam. They talked to a couple other people who knew her, and yeah, you find out who the murderer is about maybe, there's 12 chapters, maybe like halfway, 6, 7, or 8, I can't completely remember. It wasn't who I thought it was, and I enjoyed that. I gave it 3 stars. And the reason I didn't like it as much is because it was written in the 60s. There's very 60s sexism. Like, all the women are described in a way, it's not, as somebody says on the Goodreads, it's not vulgar, but it's just like, I don't need to know how big her breasts are or what her waist looks like, you know? He does also give descriptions of the men, but it's a little more towards the women. So, yeah, that was a bit weird. It was very 60s, if that can explain that to you in any way. Yeah, I didn't like that part of it, but I did like the mystery. I thought it was really good. Paul was fine. And Barbara was fine. All the characters were fine. I don't know if any of them, like, when you think of private investigators nowadays, you think of like the ones you've seen on TV, like, was it Rockford, Mannix, Magnum, either series, and they have like a lot of charisma and personality. Paul doesn't really have that. He's sort of like the flat character, and maybe that's the point. He's flat for everybody else to bounce off of. But, yeah, I don't know. If you're gonna read any of the 8, maybe read this one last. I haven't read the other 4 yet, but I wouldn't. I mean, again, this is why I think it's not about the perfect murders getting away. It's about how the murderer did it. I'm still not. Somebody else dies in the book, and I'm still not. I've read it twice how that happened, and I'm still not 100% sure I know what happened. Yeah, but it's very 60s. So, but it's good. It is entertaining. It is short. If you can find it, check it out. Hope that was helpful at all. And maybe once I read, I'm going to do a part 2 for the next 4, and then maybe once I do that, I will do a part 3 and talk about all the spoilers. So, but if you've read any of these books, let me know what you think of them. Probably most people have read the ABC murders in this batch. In the next batch, it's Double Indemnity, Strangers on a Train, The Secret History, and The Red House Mystery. So probably those first 3 most people would have read. So yeah, but let me know if you've read these. Let me know if you want to read them. I can spoil you for stuff if, like me. I love a spoiler. I'm happy to spoil things. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.